Great. Welcome, everyone. So let's begin with prayer. Living God, we know that the church is people, not buildings, but we have treasured spaces in which we worship you in the beauty of holiness. We thank you for the faithful who built our sanctuaries and stewarded them over generations with great care. Now that we are the stewards of chapels, churches, rectories, great halls, and offices, help us to discern how our big buildings might fit into your plan in this time. Give us the courage to ask the big questions that may lead us to new insight. Open us to creative possibilities as we share the challenge of caring for our buildings. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, again, welcome everyone. I think there's like 47, 48 of you in here now, and we had 70 people who registered. So this is clearly an important topic. And I know that from my visitations, numerous times in my visitations, people will talk about the challenge of the buildings that they have. And so what we're going to do is do this in two parts. One part is tonight, where myself and our canons listen to your concerns, and we'll take notes about that. And then we'll find out what person we need to come and help us address those issues. And so we'll do that in a few minutes, but to start off, we thought we'd have a couple of churches who have big buildings, who have succeeded in repurposing them, managing them, leasing them, how they've been able to take these big spaces and make them productive. So first of all, we're going to hear from St. James and Andrew in Greenfield and All Saints Worcester. And so it's your choice who goes first, Heather and Molly or Sam and David. Who wants to go first?
Heather and Molly didn't know that you were going to ask us to do this.
We did. I didn't tell you.
Didn't all know.
I was a poor communicator.
That makes it clear who's going to go. This.
Sorry, that was not good co-leading. I humbly come before you all. We have several folks from James and Andrew, so they will hopefully chime in with whatever I'm getting wrong or missing, hopefully in the chat or something. So like many of you, we've been blessed with an abundance of space. We have a couple of rectories, a big parish hall building, lower level, big church, and a tiny chapel. Or what to us feels like a big church and a tiny chapel. And in 2015, 14-15, we did the recasting of building assets program, which was really helpful for helping us kind of break out of some old scripts and thinking about things in some new ways. And out of that program, we decided to really fully pursue renting our space with the wider community. And we kind of have three different tiers. We have some long-term lease spaces. We have some groups that use our space on an ongoing basis, and we have one-time events. Probably the most successful long-term lease relationship that we had was with Tapestry's Syringe Access Program, who leased our lower level outright. It was fantastic for them because nobody wanted a syringe access program in town, and we did, and we're happy to host them. And we had compatible missions. And it worked really well until they outgrew our space. And so we actually have a vacant lower level right now, which is part of why we're here. But we have found, like maybe some of you that also rent your space, that the needs before the pandemic and the needs now are different in our community, which has raised new questions for us. But our theme that we kind of keep going back to with our spaces is how is the community calling us to share this space and use this space? If we're going to keep it and we keep feeling like we're called to keep it, how can we use this? We also have a rectory that we have found a creative solution where we actually have our sexton live there and provide security and does other things, which has been a help for us. What am I missing, Fred and Alan and Molly, Catherine, whoever else I'm not seeing?
I think the other thing that's important to say is at the moment, yeah, I'm not muted. We have got a task force that includes the two of us, members of our finance committee and members of our property committee. And we are meeting over the course of a couple of months, every few weeks. And we set a series of questions for ourselves. How do we use our spaces? Which do we feel are being used well and which are underutilized? What community needs might we be able to provide more support for? And can we think of any really creative things? Because we, in the last year, kind of the last of the very well-to-do Greenfield families remembered us in their estate. And so we have received some generous gifts, and we're working on being incredibly thoughtful and prayerful and deliberate about what we do with those gifts. But we're very much thinking about how can they help us use our space and enhance our ministries to the community. So that's the only thing I'd add.
I would just add to what Heather said, that, and Heather, you could probably be more specific than me, but I think we all found that there had to be a good balance in terms of finding people to use the space, tenants, if you will, a good balance between their needs and what we could provide. And so certain kinds of folk and with certain kinds of programming, I think long-term, Heather, am I right, long-term, in order not to overwhelm our sexton and everybody else and share the space. So there was quite a bit of learning that went into the process of using that space, renting that space.
It's very true. We did find that long-term leases were the best arrangement because it was the least demand on our staff, and while also sharing our space the most fully. And those ongoing events, kind of the second best. And then the one-time events, which are the most popular, they actually only bring in like a few thousand a year. And they're a lot of work for our sexton, but it's also good community relationship building. So we still do it. It's an ongoing thing, right? These beautiful spaces. What do we do with them? And it feels like the answer changes by season. So the answer 5 years ago is, I don't think what our answer will be now.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for telling that story. Thank you for all that happens in Greenfield. So let's turn to Worcester, All Saints.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Smith. I'm the rector at All Saints. And I'm sorry that our senior warden, David Lyko, is not able to be with us tonight. We have an enormous space. I didn't even realize when I first came there, even after having interviewed and walked around, how big the space is. And long before I arrived here, they had started the process of looking for tenants to take over parts of the building. And we've been fairly successful at that. We have a music school, which rents half of our second floor and all of our third floor. We were fortunate that they were a group that was established in the suburbs of Worcester and decided it was important for them to move into the center of Worcester. And so came with already an established nonprofit that had the funds to do the refurbishing of the space. And so it's funny, I was talking to my staff about this today, my very small staff, and talking about the third floor, and realized I've never been up to the third floor because it's their space. And they said, you don't even want to go up there. It's so beautiful. You don't even want to see it. It's just going to make you sad. But actually it doesn't make me sad because that's an asset for us. They've done that work. It was done on their dime and not ours, which is really a gift. So they're a great tenant. They're an established organization. They pay their rent on time. They come into the building to do things that are beautiful. They make music. So they respect the building in a way that that maybe some other programs might not as well. They're a really good tenant. So that's on our half of our second and all of our third floor. And then in our basement, which is also very large, we have till just last month had a program called African Community Education. It's a program which works with refugees and migrants and really helps folks in the Worcester area to acclimate, supporting kids that are in school, just giving them a little extra help and helping them understand socially and all that sort of stuff. Really wonderful program. Such a wonderful program that through COVID, they were really strong and they now have their own building. So we've lost them as a tenant. And so now we're in the process of refurbishing that space some, because unlike the music school, that was a tenant which was pretty hard on the building. We had kids, that had trauma in their lives. And so they weren't always as respectful of the building as they could have been. But it was so mission driven for us. It was so connected to our mission that that was okay. We were willing to deal with that because we felt like we were doing something so good. But it brings me to an interesting conundrum that I've found as I've been thinking and working on trying to find a new tenant for that basement, that lower floor space, which is that balance between the greatest tenant in the world and the one that's doing the work in the community that aligns with who we are the best. And it's been a really interesting balance to try to think about, I'd love to find another Packagug music school to go in the basement, honestly, because they're just so easy. But I'm not really sure, even though that aligns with us, we do a lot of music at All Saints Worcester and it aligns having music programs. I'm not sure that that if we had two sort of very nice music or arts programs, I think I would worry a little bit that we weren't doing enough of the other sorts of things we're called to do. So I've been really conscious of thinking about how could we find a partner for that space that's doing the kind of work that that fulfills other pieces of our Christian mission, and also pay us money, right? Because we're trying to afford these spaces. The biggest challenge we have is that we have a very small parking lot. And so we not only have to find a tenant that fits missionally and the space is right for them, but also one that doesn't require very many parking spaces because we just don't have them. And that's a real challenge for us. It was part of what made the African Community Education Program such a great tenant, because they were actually working with folks who, for the most part, didn't own cars. So that issue was not there. That was really kind of a lovely connection in that way, because that's a real challenge for us. I've been working some and thinking about how to try to fill that space again. I've been working with the city's economic development office quite a bit. I've found them to be a really good resource because they sort of know, they have their ears to the ground and they sort of know who's looking for space and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm doing a lot of networking in other ways too to try to do that. But I found the city to be an interesting one. And that brought us an interesting opportunity to fill that space that we ultimately said no to. The city was looking for an emergency shelter for the winter for homeless folks. They'd lost a hotel setting that they were using, the city was using, and they needed a new space. And we spent a lot of time talking to them, touring people through the space, doing all of that. They wanted to put 60 beds in our basement. They would have built out showers, they would have done all of that. Ultimately, we decided that it was too disruptive to our space to have 60 people in the basement all winter. We just didn't think, and honestly, I don't think our systems could have maintained it. The other thing we have to think about as we think about tenants is not just our staff requirements, but also can our building handle it? Can our infrastructure handle it? And I really don't think we could have handled, thinking about plumbing alone, 60 people in our basement. So that would have balanced our budget for 2023. It would have been a wonderful thing. But ultimately we said, no, that's not a good decision for us because it's not going to do well. And one of the challenges we have with having this big tenant of this music school is that I've always got to balance their needs and their interests. I went to them right away as we began to discuss this with the city. about the shelter because I like to be transparent about things. And they were terribly concerned because they're bringing people in from all over the city and people of all kinds of economic levels, but many people who are nervous about dealing with people, homeless population. And so that was a real challenge for us. So one of the good things that we've done recently is to really upgrade our security system. We have a really good door system with number codes, which can be put in to unlock doors so that we can set temporary codes, we can set permanent codes, all of that kind of thing. And that's been really helpful to us in trying to do the same kind of leases that Heather was talking about, not just the long-term leases, but also the groups that might come in for 3 to 6 months or the one-time things. The fact that we can set a code for them means that we don't always have to have a staff person on site when they're using the space. So in making the investment in that door system, which we have 2 different doors that have access, and again, we can set exactly the time that a code is valid, has really helped us to be able to rent space without having to worry as much about staffing always, depending on who the group is, of course. The other thing that I just want to mention, Heather talked about the stress on the staff, and that's certainly true. We have to think about that. One of the things we do with our short-term rentals, with those sort of one-offs, is we built into the fee structure an additional payment for the sexton. So the sexton doesn't mind nearly as much those one-off events because the sexton gets extra pay for those, and that makes the sexton happy. So that's been a good offset that means that we really don't have problems with staff worrying about those extra events. That's been really good. We the other thing I'll just say in terms of all this, one of the things we're working really hard to do is to really be conscious of maintenance set-asides, about budgeting every year, if we can manage it, money to set aside, because one of the issues of big buildings is big repair bills. Just today, we did a whole thing about our sprinkler system, and we thought we had all that set, and they were coming in today to do all the work on the sprinkler system and coordinating it with the fire alarm system. And we've discovered that there's a fatal flaw in our fire alarm system. So besides the $20,000 that we just had to deal with for the sprinkler system, we're now going to have to replace major parts of our fire alarm system. But of course, we have to do it. There are no options there, right? But there are always these maintenance things going on. And so I'm hoping that we will get to a place where we understand that part of our regular budgeting has to be maintenance set-asides, which we can accrue year to year, so that when the big things happen, maybe they won't impact us quite so much, because with this building, we just know. And we spend a lot of time thinking about maintenance and what do we need to sweat and what can wait another year. We spend a whole lot of energy on that, but that's the reality. We can't do all the work that needs to be done on this building. I think those are the big points that I had.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks a lot for that. And hopefully what you have expressed and what Heather and the folks in Greenfield expressed might just create some ideas for everyone who's here. And there's other success stories too. There's other stories of places that have found good ways to use big buildings. And one of those is Grace Great Barrington. It doesn't have a building at all. And they've prospered in this new place that they rent. And if you're, if that's something in the long haul that you're considering, just know that my office will work with you on that. And at all decisions about selling buildings, no matter what they are, if they're church-owned, have to go through our standing committee. And so now what we want to do is open up the conversation to this group to just talk about challenges that you have in terms of your buildings. And what we're going to do is record this. And as I mentioned at the start of this hour, our canons will meet and discuss what you say and figure out who the best person or people are that we can get for another webinar that can come in and address those issues. So we ask you to address those issues. And we also ask that since we're limited to another 40 minutes and we've got 60 people, to kind of condense those remarks down so we can hear what you have to say, but also be cognizant of the fact that there's other people that are going to want to speak. And the way we'll do this is If you'd like to speak, just raise your digital hand, which is found at the bottom of your screen, and we'll acknowledge you. Or you can raise your hand, your physical hand, and Vicky will be looking around and call on people to speak. So we invite your insights. We invite your expression of the situations that you're in, so that we can be in these things together.
Bishop Doug, Chris Freitag.
Good evening, Bishop and everyone. What comes to mind right away, and we're from Grace Episcopal Church in Amherst, and there was a discussion about pooling resources for utilities, and whether this was looking at a solar farm or something I know was going around the diocese. And I'm thinking more even for elevator situations where, there are a lot of churches around that have elevators. Each one of us has to, contract with a company to come in to do maintenance, to do inspection work and everything else. And, again, this whole idea of pooling resources for various types of maintenance work could, in fact, help to save a lot of our churches some good finances. So, that's something to think about and consider. And I don't know really what happened with the utility portion of it. I know we were asked about it, and we were actually very interested because, again, not every building is up to having a solar array on the top of it for various reasons. So, but if you can be a part of a solar farm and sort of get some savings that way, we can go a long way to saving on our budgets, but also being as green as we can as well. So I'll leave
Bishop,
it.
if you don't mind, I'll jump in here for just a moment. You are correct, Chris, that we are in the research phase of a solar farm for our diocese. And Grace Amherst was stellar in getting us data. So thank you for that. It's a slow-moving process, and we hope to have some data for Diocesan Council, hopefully in February. That said, this is a project that, if it does go forward, will probably be 18 months door to door once we get an approval. So any measure that your congregations can take right now to buy power through somebody's solar credits, that's a good thing. So don't say no to that because you're waiting for the bigger project. That said, if we do accomplish this goal in 18 months to 2 years, given the trajectory, that will be a time when all of our congregations can source their electricity from this common farm. So it's exciting, but it's slow moving, and we'll keep you posted. And let's see, we have another hand up. Steve Henning.
Hi, I'm Steve Henning. I'm from St. Francis Church in Holden. I'm the chair of the property committee. And like everybody else, we were shocked when we saw what the price of our oil was going to be for the coming heating season. But that's not at the moment the biggest issue. It is certainly up there. We have two other major issues. One of them is lighting in the nave. We are looking to upgrade our lighting because it has gotten to a point where it's very difficult to change the bulbs, and the fixtures that were originally put in don't lend themselves to bulbs that are now available to provide adequate lighting in the nave. And plus other lighting issues in Fellowship Hall as well. And one of the other big issues we have is in Fellowship Hall, we have these upper windows that are trapezoidal in design that either need major refurbishing or replacing. And part of the issue these days is finding quality people to come out and give estimates and an idea of what it is. And then the other thing is going to be finding the funding for situations like this. Well, I mean, almost you want to call it for, but even though Fellowship Hall is joined to the, you know, et cetera, we have a separate house, St. Clair House, that is probably underutilized. I don't know how much more we could utilize it for. We've had AA groups in there, et cetera. We use it for Sunday school, which is not as big as it used to be. And we have a rectory that is old, that is going to need some maintenance work down the road. We have done some major work. We managed to replace all the knob and tube wiring that was still in it. That actually happened during the beginning part of the pandemic when we saw that. So those are some of the real issues facing us at this point right now as we move forward. And of course, our budget is nothing to what it used to be. And then taking another hit, you know, paying probably close to $10,000 or $12,000 more this heating season than we paid last year isn't helping matters at all. My only concern is I think the solar farm is a great idea. We deal with a municipal lighting company in Holden, and I haven't heard a peep out of them at all for any of these other alternative issues for sourcing electrical supply. So I'm not sure how that's going to work with us being part of this municipal lighting division. So that's where we're at this point. At least those are the big things that I face, other than, you know, running into issues nowadays, getting quality help in terms of HVAC. We had a major issue with the heating system in that, and it was actually a very simple fix. It was the pump that was used for pulling the oil from the tank that's outside into our boilers. The motor went, and it would do is it would trip a fuse, and then we would be without heat. And by the time somebody got there and fixed the fuse, et cetera, it took 3 trips to get that fixed. We were dangerously close to having a very cold Christmas Eve and Christmas Day if we didn't get it fixed soon enough. So it's issues like that. We have a building that has like 8 zones in it, with approximately 8 different thermostats. I go crazy trying to figure out, you know, the timing and all of those, et cetera, and to keep track of things. We try to maintain minimal amounts when the building isn't being used. So, you know, issues that I think probably a lot of other congregations are facing as we move forward, but that's us at this point.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. We've got a lot of hands up. Mike Devine.
Yes, we have a fairly large building at St. Peter's in Springfield. And 2 things. One, I would like to find out how people found all of these organizations that would like to rent the space. We need a good yenta to help do some matchmaking. The other thing is the resources to make major improvements on the building. For example, our clerestory windows, which are quite large, leak a lot. And we would like to have somebody take a look at them to see how we can seal them, making the place more efficient, because as it is now, because of the inefficiencies of our system, the rents that we need to charge are higher than what most places would want to pay. So that building use is connected to efficiency.
Thank you very much, Michael. Nina Pooley.
So I really appreciate everybody voicing these technical issues that we have with big buildings. I assure you, we have them too at St. Stephen's. And it's not that I'm not worried about the technical stuff. It's that I'm really hoping that we can find some help for the sort of adaptive shift stuff. So by that, I mean the visioning of how we utilize our buildings so that we're doing more than maintaining property, we're really finding the fit that works for our mission and ministry and revitalizes us as people. Not just pours more money into our buildings. And I appreciate pouring money into the building is what we do. But if from my theory here, my theology is that if we're going to keep the building, it has to further our mission and ministry. Otherwise, sorry, Bishop Doug, but you can have your building back. And please, people at St. Stephen's, I have no intention of giving the building back, but it's just a building. Until it's absolutely fundamental to the mission and ministry of the congregation and the needs of the greater community, it's hard to justify the amount of money we're pouring into it just to maintain it. So I was kind of hoping that as we look for support, that we might find some folks to help us with some of those visioning questions and that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Nina. Michael Young, you're up next.
Hi, Mike Young here from St. Andrews. To respond to Steve Henning's comments about upgrading lighting, 3 years ago, we upgraded our interior and exterior lighting through a company that's associated with Eversource. And we were able to get quite a bit of lighting taken care of by a grant that cost us no money at all. And we were able to finance, be able to pay out the work over a 3-year period. And it really decreased our electrical costs by about 60%. So I'd be happy to forward the information on this company to whoever would be interested. And I don't know how would be the best way of doing it. Should I send it to you, Vicki?
Great, Michael. I'll be sending out some resources.
Okay, great. Also, Vicki, I had a follow-up question about the solar farm. And you mentioned that this may be reviewed by the Diocesan Council in February.
The council may get an update from the research phase.
Okay, so this 18-month period, is that it'd be like maybe 18 months before any kind of a decision would be made?
No, actually, it's 18 to 24 months once a diocesan council gives its approval for a solar farm construction.
Okay.
And then there are lots of steps in between, but that's the ballpark of how long it goes from our the yes from the council
Okay,
to a reality that we're all plugged into.
great. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Mayo, you're up.
Hello, so I'm from Christ Church in Fitchburg, and I am the treasurer there, so I am very concerned with finances. And one of the big things for our giant building is also that it is not handicap accessible. So as we're looking at tenants, the difficulty is how on earth can we don't have an elevator. I don't even know where you would put an elevator. There's no way to get people to our second floors or our downstairs. It's very challenging. And so I don't know how other people have gone about adding that to their buildings, and how renovations has happened for that, as well as like what All Saints Worcester saying, hey, they had tenants who came and paid for these renovations. That's fantastic. Can we find some in Fitchburg? For your northern neighbors, Worcester, we would love them up here. There's just such a huge expense in order to renovate our building to make it so that we could rent it out. And I don't know how we find that funding. Are there ways that the diocese can help finding grants, and pointing us in the right direction? I know how to write grants. That's my job during the day. But I don't know where to go for church grants, and what can help us with that. So there's those kinds of renovation things that we would really love direction for, and where we can find the funding to make that happen, as well as someone previously was talking about ceiling windows. Like our windows are just letting all of the heat out, and we have oil heat too. And we are looking at spending $80,000 this year on oil heat, which is astronomical and way beyond what our budget can actually take. So it's scary right now financially. So those are really the big things I think that I'm looking at. And then wondering at the tenants, like previous person said, the costs, like how much money do you bring in? Like for Worcester and for St. James and I forget your other, St. Andrew, like how much money are you bringing in from your tenants ever on a monthly basis? How does that really supplementing what you guys need? Like, can we bring in $10,000 a month? Can we bring in $20,000 a month? Like what is feasible, and how do we figure out that stuff? So those are things that would be really helpful for us as we're researching this.
Thank you very much. And Mary Frances Kearns joined the conversation.
Thank you. And thank you, Bishop, for offering this time to collaborate with all our colleagues and our brothers and sisters all over the diocese for this. This is a challenge for All Saints Berkshires. And we have been looking at our mission, which needs to be reworded, but for my mission, I've kind of adapted, is one that offers hope, healing, and peace to our community, not just to our parish, but to our community. And so we do have some groups that come, but they don't use it all year long. And we're really grateful for the Playwright Mentors Program, which helps high school students and troubled families to be able to communicate their issues in a positive way and use that for their lives. But in order to move on with that, we do have some rentals. Recovery ministry is really strong. It's grown this year. But one of the things I'd like to give to some of you folks would be that we had some moisture in our basements. Now, none of you have moisture in your basements, right? None of them smell musty. But we had it evaluated, and I'm going to name a company, Dr. Energy Saver out of Connecticut, but it's not that name now. I think I can get it for you if you want it, but we had them come in and do about 2/3 of our building in the basement to moisture remediate. And we're looking at probably another third to do yet. We were able to pay for that part, but that has saved us on energy costs. We don't exactly know how much, but since it has been installed, we find that we do not have as much of we hardly have any odor downstairs with the huge dehumidifiers they had, but they also put up moisture remediation paneling on the walls down there so that our recovery ministries can meet down there safely. So that's one thing that I would add, you may want to look into. It's your roof and your cellar that are the most have the most impact on your energy use that we've learned. So I would love to have, we have a building agreement. We make sure it's a building agreement and we refer to it as a donation, but it might be a suggested donation that is kind of required. And for some of the groups that meet. And I would love to maybe have a place, and maybe there already is, Vicki, and I haven't looked at this, but on the website, maybe an opportunity to have some of the wording of the other churches' building use agreements so that we can get some ideas for that.
That's a great idea.
And the only other thing that I have to offer is just tell your story to any leader in the community that the food pantry has been talking to us about possibly moving into our basement. We have a huge parking lot and we have no steps going into the basement so that when the food truck comes to unload, they would be able to take on the food. So please pray for that. It's a slow process. We start talking, then we back away, and then we start talking and back away. But now I've just heard through the grapevine that there's another agency that is probably new, and it would be a new agency that goes along with our hope, healing, and peace mission that wants us. So tell your story. I've called the mayor. The two former mayors have had tours. My present mayor, Jennifer, has not. So she's going to be invited for lunch and have a tour of the building. But other leaders, leaders of other churches, anybody who comes in asking to use the building, I have them go on the entire tour and I tell them the story. So there's hope, folks. We just have to keep trying. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Mary Frances. Frank Ruggiero, you're up.
All right, thank you. I'm with St. Mark's in Leominster, and we're currently going through a clergy transition. We have a rather large rectory that's also rather old, and it's very possible that the rector we call will not use that building. And so we're going to have to look at renting it out, and our finances are going to require that we rent it out at market rate. We're not going to be able to sort of donate it or something like that. So my question is, are there other parishes in the diocese that have done this? And there any other place we can go for guidance on how best to proceed and what the gotchas are in doing this? We have some idea, but it'd be nice to know if someone's already trod this ground before.
Thanks, Frank. Mimi?
Hello, Mimi Royston, Good Shepherd, Oxford, Mass. And we have a beautiful old stone church, very much like Mary Frances's background. And it has a slate roof, and that creates a big problem. It takes a roof project from tens of thousands to over $100,000 repair. And so we are looking at a major roof repair, and we do have some trustee funds that that we get a contribution from, that we use for our operating budget annually. And we're really looking at, should we be considering a loan rather than reducing that trustee fund? And I know in the past, our church has gotten a loan through the diocese for a major furnace that we needed to purchase, and we just paid it off. So maybe we'd be eligible. Obviously, that's something we will follow up on, but I share that with others as well. And but yeah, there are the small things, and then there are the big ones. The big ones are tough. And we did actually, I do want to mention this, we found a contractor that does work with slate roofs. He will use something that is not slate, but looks very much like slate. And so we've got quotes. We're still negotiating some things, and we're looking for a grant from in our local area. There is a grant that supports education, churches, and libraries in the area. So I'm working on the grant right now. We are applying for that and hoping that we can get grant money and loan, and that would allow us to move forward with our roof project. But if someone's looking for slate contractors, that was really hard to find. And I guess I should pass that along to Vicky as well.
That'd be great. Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you.
Jessica Fricker.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica. I'm from St. Stephen's. I'm actually St. Stephen's in Westboro. I'm actually the property chair for our church, and there's a couple other members of my committee on here as well. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face, as I'm sure many of you do, is with the fact that our community has shrunk. Our pledging members have shrunk. And so we are looking at a big building with, a portion of the congregation that we used to have. It's not quite a fraction, but it is just a portion at this point. And so I think one of the questions that we ask ourselves sometimes is, how do we yeah, how do we justify having this big building? And especially one of the biggest problems I think that we face is, I don't know if moisture is just a nice word for mold, but we definitely have an issue with that in our basement. And the problem that happens for us is we're in a holding pattern with it, because we can neither afford to fix it nor afford to not fix it. And one of the problems we have with, especially with taking on new tenants and building use, is that until that problem is remediated, we really don't have the space to offer to other people. We had an opportunity that came up at the end, like the sort of last quarter, that would have been a nice opportunity had we been able to be prepared for it, and finding a client who could also match our mission and also help us with renovation. And it was difficult having to say no, but we knew that if we tried to save the church with this project, we would have ruined it in the process, because we wouldn't have been able to afford to fix the things they needed us to fix. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, I think, a lot of times with building use. I'm just interested to hear how you get from out of that place, that between place that we're in right now. We're heavily involved with the Girl Scouts in our community. We have several troops that come in, but we charge them nominal fees. I mean, we're not generating an income from them, but it's a worthy program to have in our spaces, and we feel that it's very supportive. And so we enjoy having them in our space. The problem with that becomes that the only rentable space we have is our parish hall. And so when our parish hall really is being used every night for these, sort of mission-driven things that we don't generate income from, we're running out of space in which to even contemplate building use, and having, tenants, if you will, and fund, self-funding and profitable organizations use our building. And I'm interested to just hear how people have gotten out from under that rock and away from that hard place, because we're really, my opinion is that we're stuck in that moment right now, where we want to be useful to our community. We want to keep reaching out. We want to keep being a part of the community at large, but we're literally just running out of things to offer them. So that's kind of where I feel we are, and what I'd be interested to hear about.
Thank you, Jessica.
And Vicki, if I could just jump in for a moment.
Sure.
About 10 more minutes left. So this is all tremendously helpful for each person to tell their story. So I'm not sure we're going to get through everybody in terms of audio in the next 12 minutes, but if you want to put things in the chat, questions that you have, that we will save everything in the chat. So then when our team gets together and figures out who can help to address these issues, we'll have heard from everyone. So just we'll continue to do this for another 10 minutes. But if you want to put things in the chat, those things will be saved and reflected on.
Thank you, Bishop Doug. Joanne from Christ the King Epiphany.
Right now, we're not faced with that problem. I want to offer a suggestion. My sister is from the Massachusetts diocese. She's in Melrose. Her church was faced with the same thing. I think it was their junior warden, went to the town and talked to them about what was available, who was looking for space. They actually hooked up with the Boys and Girls Club in Melrose, and they've taken over their basement space because they have no more use for it. And all of the remediation of cleaning up asbestos and mold and everything is taken over by them through grants that they had. So I think that opportunity is there for many of the big churches. And I think there's a couple of churches that reached out to the locals, the town or the city. And I think that's a great way to go. They've got the pulse on what's going on in the neighborhood, who's looking for space. And there's tons of grant money available for those organizations to come in and support the mission of every one of us. So that's all I have. That was all I got. So
Thank you, Joanne. Craig Cox from our cathedral.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for pulling this together. I'm the junior warden here at the cathedral in Springfield. I've been in this position now for 4 years. I've had the opportunity of working with Donna Barton, our senior, who's stepping down as our senior warden for the past several years as well. We have been literally putting one fire out after another, writing major big checks to getting major maintenance projects finished here at the cathedral, everything from the basement to the roof and everything in between. We've had a very successful time getting a lot of things done. And what I'm listening to everybody, I kind of put this, I asked this to the diocese, is as an example, we use McMahon Roofing for all our slate issues, and we can call them, they come out, they're very courteous, they're responsive, their pricing is spot on, everything is just really good about them. And we have no problem calling them for any slate issue, and that's their specialty. But does the diocese know this, that when another church within the diocese has a slate roof issue, they can call the diocese and says, who do we recommend? Who can we call regarding slate roofs? And the diocese is the clearinghouse for that, and has the records, these maintenance records of all these contractors that we use around the state and in our regions that other churches have used with success. Because I hear a lot of the same questions, the same issues, and we're all going through utility bills and so on. We had Mass Save come in and do an audit on our building, and they paid for insulation, they paid for LED lighting, all this kind of stuff that's available to all of us. We just have to call in Mass Save and ask them to come on in. But does the diocese know this? So that when a church is looking for these issues or these come up, they can call the diocese and says, hey, what do we do about this? You can say, hey, at the cathedral last year, they called in Mass Save, blah, blah, and start that conversation and help these churches out. I feel like a lot of the churches, we're out here alone, that we're these kind of issues, we don't know who to turn to. And I think the diocese could step up and be that place that we can talk to the diocese who's got the connections to these contractors and these subject matter experts that we don't, I'm not a roofer, I'm not an HVAC guy, so I have to rely on the community to bring people in and such. And it's been a learning process. I'm knowledgeably dangerous, as I call it, about a lot of issues around the cathedral now. Just out of having to deal with plumbing, electrical, HVAC, everything that has to do with everything. It's like my second home, right? My home requires maintenance, so does the cathedral, and so on. One thing on a positive note, Tom Callard, our dean, he just made contact with this organization called Share Food or Serve Food. They're out of Holyoke, and what they do is they rent commercial kitchen space to, say, caterers and food truck operators and aspiring chefs that want to cater or practice or stuff, but they need a commercial kitchen. We have a large commercial kitchen in our Undercroft, which is way underutilized. And so we're looking to see if we can make an arrangement, come up with an agreement that we could rent our kitchen out through this organization. They do all the logistics. We just give them the space and maintain the equipment and such. But it uses the space. It allows the space to be utilized for commercial food preparation. So it's called Serve Food. We just started preliminary talking with them, but we're really excited about this opportunity to bring in some passive income, because again, like you, we're all looking for passive income, right? What can we do to use this space and help it make money for the cathedral in our ever growing budget? So thanks for letting me share, and y'all take care.
Thanks a lot, Craig. We have one hand left. Diane Blue.
I just wanted to share with you an article I read. I'm from Berkshire County in North Adams at All Saints Episcopal Church, All Saints Berkshire. an article last week in the Berkshire Eagle. This whole dilemma with big churches is affecting everyone, not just the Episcopal Church, but many various types of religious groups. And the article was about Zion Lutheran Church in Pittsfield, where they no longer utilize I think it was a third floor where they had their children studying in school and all that. But what happened was they reached out, and I believe it was to the community development people. And right now they are in the process and they're not paying for it. They have a group of people, they're building walls. They're turning this place into short-term rentals for those that are homeless. There's a criteria for that person to get into the program. They're also doing a longer term, and I believe it was a year to 18 months. And there are people, the church wouldn't be so much involved with the setting this all up because whoever is running that, and I'm not sure who it is at this point, they will provide security, they will do the building, whatever they need, whether it be plumbing, showers, kitchen, whatever, they will take care of this. So we talked about reach out to other denomination and find out what they're doing and how they're doing it. It's a small world and we need to share things.
Thanks, Diane. Bishop Doug, over to you.
Sure. So thank you for all this. Everyone had really insightful things to say. And so I promise you that this is not a one-off. This is a way for our staff to gather information. And we'll continue to do that, and we will follow up with people who can address these issues. So Vicki is great at getting communication out there. Look for future meetings to come, which will have people who will suggest things that might create a different kind of space. But we hear how difficult some of these things are, and we will get people to address them. And then for myself, just a quick announcement is, we've got Bending Towards Justice coming up. Everyone on this call is very interested in mission and Bending Towards Justice, which we do in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. We've got a great speaker, Jennifer Baskerville-Burrows, and that's Saturday, January 21st. And there's lots of details about that, so I encourage you to consider that. And now I'm going to throw it to Vicki, who's got also one more announcement before we end in a prayer.
Thanks, Bishop Doug. Just wanted to let you all know that you'll get a big email tomorrow morning with some resources that I've already curated for you, and I will add to that everything that's been given in the chat tonight. So it'll all come your way tomorrow morning. And please join us on February 28th at 5 p.m. As new vestries are forming, Bishop Fisher and Canon Rich Simpson do a wonderful 1 hour on Vestry 101. So that will be 5 p.m. on February 28th.
Thank you, Vicki, and thanks for all you did for this meeting tonight.
No problem.
So let us end in prayer. Living God, we thank you for the great mission of Jesus. We thank you for the mission of mercy, compassion, and of hope. Living God, continue to guide us, give us your wisdom so that we might fulfill this mission with your grace, with your spirit. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.